If you're in B2B, LinkedIn is kind of important. But if you've spent any time on LinkedIn lately, you'll notice that it has become somewhat of a playground for cowboys and cowgirls and cowbots. There are some people doing it well. There are some people that are doing it not so well. Sitting with me right now is am I going to use this word? Insane LinkedIn influencer, Tim Denning. He doesn't like that word influencer. However, Tim has managed to amass 280,000 followers on LinkedIn, which is insane. Not only has he amassed the followers, but he now teaches and trains this stuff to people just like you to help them build their LinkedIn authority so that they can build relationships and then hopefully take those relationships off LinkedIn and sign more customers and clients without coming across as a sleazy, pushy salesperson like a lot of people on LinkedIn right now. I want you to school us, Tim, but before we get there, can you give us a little bit of a background? How, Tim, did you get into LinkedIn to such a point where you've amassed 280,000 followers, which is huge? How did it all begin?
How did it begin? So James, you know this probably better than anyone. I was working at a small bank here in Australia called NAB.
Just a small one.
Just a small one. And my boss at the time, so I had a bit of a struggle with mental illness. Most people know this, like a pretty epic one. And I managed to kind of overcome that. And I was just chatting to my boss and he said, now that you've done that, like, what's next for you? You got to challenge yourself. You got to do something outside of being just a boring banker. And so I thought, maybe I could do something on LinkedIn. He goes, all right, let's see what you can do. And so I was writing on like a startup WordPress website at the time called Addicted to Success. A lot of people don't know it, but it was like a self-improvement sort of talk about startup type website. And so I was posting stuff on there and I just literally started cross-posting some of that to LinkedIn. Didn't really get much traction, but I was just doing it as a bit of a practice. And then one day I wrote an article about like how I'd overcome that mental illness. And I put it on this WordPress blog and they automatically cross-posted it to Facebook. And in the space of 24 hours, it got 84,000 shares. So wow. Not likes, not comments, actual shares. And so that was at the point where I went, maybe I shouldn't be writing startup press releases. Like maybe there's a bit more to how these platforms work. And so I pivoted away from doing those press releases and started like telling my own story and talking about like self-improvement and a few other different topics. And then I started writing those fresh on LinkedIn. So rather than writing on just Addicted to Success, I would write straight to LinkedIn with LinkedIn in mind. So understanding that they're professionals, a lot of them are business owners, you're not going to swear. You've got to remember that when you're talking on LinkedIn, the people that are consuming it have got an imaginary boss standing behind them who's going, why did you like that? You're supposed to be a thought leader. Why are you looking at stuff about sexual harassment? That's the psychology of a LinkedIn user. So I started getting that in the back of my head as I'm writing content for the platform.
And I think it's also worth pointing out that Tim wasn't doing this because he had some clear, commercial outcome in mind. He wasn't thinking that I'm building this to support my business or I'm doing it to get more customers and clients. You were doing it because out of a sense of curiosity and probably a desire to use a new tool and also a desire to share your story.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And this is the number one problem that I see that people have is they go on LinkedIn or any of the social media platforms and they're like, what can I get out of this? My psychology has always been different. It's what can I put into this platform? What can I give? And maybe if I'm around for long enough, I might get something back, but that's never the focus. And even today, like now that I have a business, I'm still not putting content out with anything in mind in terms of getting anything back. That just happens through reciprocity, right? So that was always the focus. So to sort of cut through the story, I started doing this in kind of 2014. I also started writing stuff on medium.com as well. A lot of people know that. And it just kind of organically grew. I mean, these platforms all have algorithms. If you're showing up on a daily basis and you are writing content that is contextual to that platform, which I was, then eventually the followers and all the metrics will grow over time. And that sort of brings us to now where I'm still doing exactly what I was doing all those years ago. I haven't changed. It's every single day, 7 days a week.
Because while we've been talking, I've been checking out your LinkedIn profile. And the reason why we're having this particular conversation is because Tim kept popping up in my feed again and again and again. And eventually I just reached out and I went, Tim, how are you doing this? What's going on here? Maybe we should actually have a conversation sometime. There was a bit of back and forth, and then we decided to do a podcast. But you're doing this every day. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah, every day, James. And what I'm doing is I'm scrolling the LinkedIn feed, and I want everybody that's watching this to do this. You'll see that the majority of content you see in the feed, it looks like an ad. So visually, you're seeing stock images, you're seeing company logos. And so your brain just starts to see everything as an ad. And so psychologically, when you look at my stuff, hopefully, if it's done right, it'll kind of be like that sort of, hopefully diamond amongst all these sort of rocks that are just coming up. And that's because I'm doing that on purpose. I'm not like dressed in a business suit. I'm not with a selfie camera, because everyone's got a video with a selfie camera. So these are just like little things that you can do to like pop out from the crowd, right?
And I have just suddenly become very self-conscious about mine, because I'm looking at yours and I'm looking at mine, and mine is quite self-serving. And I must say that when I jumped in LinkedIn for the first time, I think I probably, like you, had the balance a lot better, where I was telling stories and engaging. And then, I don't know, over time, I kind of, started to throw in a couple of plugs and then a couple of promotions. And now I look at it, it's just one giant long ad for James Tuckerman. I think I need to get my balance in order. So if we want to talk about LinkedIn authority and the things that we can do, it obviously begins with content. Mm-hmm. Do you write content as articles, or do you write content as status updates, or do you do both? What type of content do you prefer?
Yeah, so I did try the old days of like trying to do all forms of content, and that didn't work for me. So, doing like short LinkedIn stories, doing videos, doing podcasts, doing written content, it was all too much. So my ethos is always start with writing, because most of us, watching this can obviously write an email, pretty straightforward. So what I do right now is I write long form blog posts between about 5 minutes and 10-minute reads. And a lot of that goes on Medium. Then I also write status updates specifically for LinkedIn. So they're restricted to 1,300 characters. And then I also do a lot of Twitter stuff now as well, which I've been doing the last 3 or 4 months. And specifically Twitter threads are what I think is a great way to put out content. And then with a Twitter thread, the last tweet of that thread is typically a call to action to an ebook or an online course. Probably works the best from my experience.
Right. So that's interesting. You've decided to go down the blog route via Medium. So I just want you to observe here that a lot of people say, I need to create my own blog and I'm going to spend money on a developer, and I'm probably going to use it as an excuse for not really getting started. I can't get started till I have my blog. Whereas Tim's gone and just used Medium. Just quickly, how many words is an average blog that you write on Medium? You said it before and I missed it. Was it 500 words?
So Medium measures it based on the read time. So it's between, the optimum is about 4 to 6 minutes. It will get you the most traction. Mine are between about 4 to 10 minutes, just depending on what I'm covering.
And how many words is that?
So a 4-minute read's like 900 words, and a 10-minute read's probably like 2,200 words.
Yeah, there you go. So it's somewhere between 900 and 2,200. The status update, you gave us a number as well too. Is it 1,300? Is that what you said?
1,300 characters is the maximum number of characters that you can do on a LinkedIn status update. Most people would know that the LinkedIn blog post feature died a couple of years ago. So it's still there, but like the algorithm gives it 0 priority. So I don't put articles on there anymore.
And then Twitter, which and you're talking about running, doing things on Twitter, and it sounds like Twitter is your tool for getting the call to action, for getting the lead or the someone responding to your offer to give them an opt-in gift. That's your Twitter.
Yeah, this is a very new thing, James, and a lot of people dismiss Twitter because it's been around since 2009, but that would be a big mistake to dismiss it. What I've figured out and what I do differently to everybody else is I do everything data backed. So there's a bit of a cycle that you'll see if you look at my work, and I'll briefly explain it. So if I do a headline on Medium, which is very important to nail the headline, chances are I've done that as a tweet or a LinkedIn status update already. So the first line of a LinkedIn status is the headline. The second line is the subtitle. And the third line is the first sentence of your blog article. So my brain is programmed to see all these platforms as basically a blog post. And that's what a tweet thread is. Like a tweet thread is the first tweet is the headline with a subtitle. The first tweet in a thread is your like first point. So if you're doing like 5 ways to improve your life, then it's number 1 way to improve your life. And then the last tweet is like your final thought or your takeaway. And then after that is your call to action. So whenever I'm using any of these platforms, I have that format in my brain. And that's why I think people consume it, because it's in a form that they understand. And so everything is data backed. So I'm constantly going back and forth between these platforms and testing different things. So I will test a headline on Twitter and LinkedIn. If I have a successful LinkedIn update, I'll then turn that into a Medium blog post. And then if I have a successful, what else is there? So I run a newsletter using ConvertKit. If I have something on there that pops, that'll go onto another platform. So I'm constantly recycling ideas, but I've got data that says that this is an idea that people want. So that's one way to kind of look at it.
Yeah, in the early days of Twitter, there was a report done called Retweetable Headlines. And it was the first time I'd really seen social media used in a way where it was being data-backed or data-driven. And there were observations about what would make a Twitter headline retweetable. And there were things like shouldn't use abbreviations. So you shouldn't use, how are you, you know what I mean? Like the R and then the U is the U, which is, early days of SMSing. If you wanted to write television, you wouldn't write TV or telly, you'd write television, you'd have the whole word. But what came out of that was a whole lot of other organizations like all the buzz feeds and all the other ones. Have I got that right? I don't know. But
BuzzFeed. Yep.
Yeah, all the clickbait type sites began to look at what was making a Twitter headline retweetable. So looking at Twitter, they're going, why are some things so retweetable? This woman's dog came home after 20 years away. You wouldn't believe what happened next. They began to see that what was happening in Twitter and they brought it across. So you're still doing this now with great effect. So if we're talking about LinkedIn authority, and we've moved into Twitter for a second there, and that's perfectly cool. But what Tim's talking about here is that he's identifying themes that he can run or formats that he can follow again and again. And it begins with the content. It might be a Twitter tweet that becomes a blog, that becomes a status update in LinkedIn, and he's not reinventing the wheel. So if we're talking about LinkedIn authority, is it fair to say that step 1 or rule number 1 is focus on the content?
Yeah, definitely focus on the content. I've done quite a few LinkedIn courses just as research, and I've noticed that a lot of them talk about lead gen or updating your profiles. What I've found is if I get 1 million views on a piece of content, and I get that pretty regularly, I would find that a couple of thousand of those 1 million people actually bother to click my profile. So everyone's got to get it in their head that no one's going to your amazing profile to read your resume. No one cares. What they see is they see your profile picture, they see your LinkedIn headline, and they see what company you work at. That's it. And they consume your content. And if they love your content, they'll follow you. That's what matters on LinkedIn. So I look at content as like a magnet. That's what brings my tribe towards me that like what I do. And then I can leverage that and obviously take them off the platform, etc. So yeah, content is the most crucial thing.
So in business, we talk about the incoming VIP. It's a goal, and VIP stands for not very important person. It stands for very interested prospect, the incoming VIP. And if you're creating content that is resonating with your audiences and you're getting good reach, there is always going to be a small number of people, the active 3%, that see what you're talking about and they think, I need Tim right now.
Correct.
And they're going to hunt him down. And the first conversation that he can have, if he's going to have a conversation, he doesn't have to do much selling because they understand who he is, what he's about, what he stands for. It's usually what's the structure that you will apply? How will you help me? And what's it going to cost? And if Tim can tick those two boxes, they're going to come across the line. So the first piece is content. If I wanted to become a LinkedIn authority, I've obviously got to produce content. We've heard some great tips there. What else would I need to do?
So James, just on the last point there, one thing that I don't do, which is very different to a lot of people that may be watching this, is I refuse to do sales emails to my email list. So I take these people from LinkedIn and put them in an email list. I just refuse. So what I do instead of sales emails is I do blog posts. So I send natural blog posts that I would normally write for an audience. And then all I do is, again, I treat the email like a blog post. The last sentence is, and if you want to know more, click here for the course or the book or whatever it is. That's it. But so that means if you read that email, you're still getting a blog post, which you love from me. You're not getting a sales email. The other thing I don't do is I don't do evergreen. So I don't put you in a funnel and send you all these stupid automated messages that most of us are smart enough now to go, this is not James, right? It's somebody else. So I don't do that. Whenever I sell a product, it's me that sells it. I write the email, I respond to the emails, and I do like launches. So you can't access my products by going to my website. You can't find them in Google. They're only available when I decide to release them. And I use a bit like, if anyone knows Greta, the Instagram queen here in Melbourne that works with the founder guys. She kind of taught me this. She has a business that sells watches, and you can only buy the watch, I think it's 1 day out of every 30. Outside of that, you can't buy the watch. So I kind of use that approach because it's more personal. Yeah. And so, James, I just wanted to link that back because that was on my mind. But sorry, we'll go back to your question.
Yeah, that's great. No, I'm loving it. This is why I love doing podcasts. So, for example, Tim has found his model where he posts things on Medium, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Me, I prefer to do a podcast, and then I can cut it up in a bunch of different ways, and I can syndicate it in my own ways. We aren't at this moment putting full blog posts in emails, but we have in the past. And of course, it's worked very well, as Tim's discovered. And then more recently, we began to do it again and discovered that it works really well. We try things, we move in circles, we come back. So LinkedIn authority, first piece of the puzzle is content. What's the second piece of the puzzle?
Second piece of the puzzle for me is having the daily habit. So obviously I'm a self-improvement guy. None of this works if you do it ad hoc. You do have to have it as a daily practice. So for me, what I kind of tell people is 15 minutes a day to publish a written status update on LinkedIn. And the beauty of that is that it gives you, because a lot of people overthink this and they start trying to edit it, send it to friends to get feedback, all this kind of stuff. And if you do that, it's not a natural LinkedIn update, so it doesn't work. So you block it to 15 minutes. It's 1,300 characters maximum. It's pretty straightforward to do. So that would be the kind of the second step, is making sure that this is daily. I normally take the Sunday off. I find Sunday engagement's not great for my stuff. So that would be second. And then James, the third one would be the storytelling.
Well, let's just pause on the second one. The key word that I like is habit. And exactly the way that you described it is exactly the experience that we've seen with our clients in our world. So we have some LinkedIn training. We've got a 10-day LinkedIn roadmap. Mm-hmm. And I've seen people post their LinkedIn article in our private Facebook group to get feedback on the LinkedIn article from the members of the Facebook group before posting it on LinkedIn. And the reality is that those types of people expect to post one thing on LinkedIn and the world to change. I don't know. Tim's shaking his head for people who are listening to the audio. Post one thing once and the world is going to change. But in my not so humble opinion, it's like waking up and eating a bowl of porridge. If you wake up, you make porridge. Every now and then you're going to add some apple. Every now and then you're going to add some walnuts. Every now and then you're going to add some honey. And then day after day after day after day, your boring, humble bowl of porridge ends up being something beautiful and nutritious and amazing. And then one day you happen to make that bowl of porridge that knocks it out of the park, that beats all your other bowls of porridge. Am I going on too far with this analogy? But that bowl of porridge, if anyone else had it, they would go, "You are a porridge king." But every day after that bowl of amazing porridge, every other bowl of porridge is going to be even better because you've learned that skill. Social media is the same. It's you're saying, I do it daily. And you start off, you do it every day. And some days it's good, some days it's not good, but every day it gets a little bit better. And your presence gets stronger, your skills get stronger, people get more familiar with you, LinkedIn starts to reward you. Is my porridge analogy All right.
It's spot on. Yeah. That's how it works. James, I'll put in my own little metaphor, and this is a data-backed phrase. So I'll just warn you, right? When I say this phrase, it goes highly, highly viral. And it's pretty simple. If you do this for 1 year, you'll build a nice little side hustle. It'll make you no money, but that's fine. You'll build a nice little side hustle. If you do what I'm saying for 5 years, I am absolutely confident you'll become a multi-millionaire many times over. And I can't even tell you what the path will be. I can just tell you that I've seen so many people do this now, and the ones that can do it for 5 years have these indestructible businesses built on a pillar of content, right? That's the beauty of what I'm talking about. Unfortunately, most people get into day 30 and they give up. The ones that can get into, I don't know what 5 times 365 is, but those ones become Gary Vaynerchuk, and that's it.
And I'll tell you what, I mean, like not so long ago, in fact, less than 10 days ago, I interviewed Travis Chappell, who's a podcaster. And I met Travis 2 months into his podcasting journey 4 years ago. So I met him 2 months into his podcasting journey 4 years ago. And I was privileged to interview him for my podcast and our B2B Summit, as I said, within the last 10 days. And that he provided that exact same piece of feedback. He said he had to make it a habit. And there were times where he was thinking, what's the point? Because he wasn't getting the traction that he was looking for. But over time, there wasn't necessarily one moment. There was lots of moments that built up, and they created the traction, and the traction created the following. Because as I said, Tim's got 280,000 followers. Was there a moment where you looked and went, oh my goodness, I've passed the 30,000 connections or contacts that LinkedIn allows me to have, and now I've just got followers? Was there a moment? And you went, whoa.
I try not to pay attention to it too much. I still think followers are a bit of a vanity metric. I'm more focused on email subscribers because they're mine and I can talk to them whenever I want. So no, I don't pay much attention. What I do care about very soon is I'm going to launch Substack. So I'm going to pay very close attention to the number of Substack subscribers, but followers, useless, don't care. You can have 1,000 followers and make $1 million. That's the other thing people don't get. They think you need 100,000 followers. You don't. Like I have 100 raving fans that I know will buy basically anything that I ever sell. That's where the money is. This idea of like having huge audiences, I'm not really a fan of it.
Yeah. What is it? 100 times 1,000 is $100,000.
Correct.
That's an income. All right. So we talked about content. We talked about making it a daily habit. Now, some people find that very intimidating. And when Tim said 5 years, they went WTF in their heads, which stands for why the face. That's what my kids tell me. But however, if you can just get it started and you start to see the impact, it's like a snowball. You know, you knock it down the hill, you'll see it grow, you'll see the traction, you'll create some momentum, and momentum will create momentum. So content is our first tip. Daily habit is the second tip. And you had a third piece. And you brought it up. What was that? What was that third piece?
Third piece is storytelling. So you mentioned before, James, Gary Vaynerchuk has a famous formula that I kind of use, which is the jab, 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 right hook.
Yeah.
Right. And so mine's a little bit more, quite a few more jabs before any kind of right hook. And so the third tip is storytelling. What works great on any of these platforms is storytelling. And that can be your own story. That can be other people's stories. I do a mix of the two normally. Like James Altucher, who I follow, he only ever does his story, which I do find sometimes can be a bit exhausting. But yeah, mixing the two is good. And that's because a lot of people, when I watch on LinkedIn, everything just looks like an ad. Come to my summit. I'm doing this. We're selling that. Our customers did this. Our employees are amazing. Look how amazing they are. It's all just ads. So what sets you apart is storytelling. And there's a number of formats and ways you can do that. It's probably not something I can summarize in a podcast, but what we call the rate of revelation, which is the speed that you can get from that first sentence, which is your headline, all the way down to the last sentence, which is your takeaway. The speed that you can do that definitely has a huge impact on whether people will or won't consume it. And then the other trick would be, there's a lot of negativity, right? We've got pandemics, we've got politics, all these things. Like for a business owner at the moment, it's just a minefield. You just feel like the whole world's collapsing every day, right? And so what people really want is they want a touch of inspiration. So the best stories are the ones that build people up rather than sooking about diversity and all these things that you see on LinkedIn. Not that they're not important issues, but it's just a bunch of whinges, right? And it's really depressing to watch. What people want is inspiration. They want to be told, you know what, you can start a business, you can raise money, you can do it. It's not going to be easy, but you can do it. And so I'm the guy that says you always can. I don't care where you've come from, what your background is. I'm the can guy. And for everyone watching this with your business, if you can become that can person as well, I think you'll do really well.
So instead of whinging about something, if you want to get that message across, reframe it in a way that can inspire. So
Correct.
rather than shake your fist at the universe, think about how you can inspire other people. I had friends that used to say things like, someone should do something about that. And I'd say, well, why don't you do something about that? Go into politics, start a business, create a following on LinkedIn with 280,000 followers, put yourself in a seat of influence, and then you can make a difference. Stop shaking your fist at the universe. Storytelling is also really super important because it helps us share our humanity and demonstrate that we are willing to be a little bit vulnerable. Because when we're vulnerable, we're authentic, we're likable. A lot of your stories are focused on your life and your experiences. And you mentioned at the very beginning, because you come out of a hard place, mental illness challenges. How have you managed to get over that fear of revealing information about yourself that otherwise sometimes might feel a little bit too personal and sometimes a little bit raw?
Yeah, this is the hardest one, James. And obviously because I came from a banking background, there's this element of like, you can't really talk about this stuff. It's very taboo and it can definitely affect your career. What happened was in 2015, I had a near miss with cancer, really, really close to having a big problem. And so when your life flashes before your eyes, I said, after this, I just don't give a fuck anymore. Excuse the language, but I'm just going to do this. I don't care if you don't like it because it doesn't matter. In the end, it doesn't matter. If I die tomorrow, like people come to the funeral, 2 weeks later, you have forgotten, you have moved on with the business, and that's the end. So that is my mindset, and that's what drives all this. Like the message is way too powerful to not kind of put it out there. And you know, Tim Ferriss is someone that I follow. He's talked about his childhood sexual abuse story, and you know that's saved a lot of lives and people that would have committed suicide had he have not come out and said, you know what, it's fine if this has happened to you, just go get help, it'll be all okay, right? And so that's how I look at it. There's so many people, especially after the pandemic, that are just battling with mental illness, particularly business owners, and they're too afraid to talk about it. And so I want to be the guy that says, you know what, let's talk about it, because it's actually pretty easy to solve. You can go get professional help, it'll be all fine. You're going to die really way faster than you think you are anyway, unfortunately. So we may as well just get this out of the way and have some fun, because party's not long. That's how I look at it.
Yeah, and that set of experiences gave you perspective. Yeah, guys and gals, ponder on that. The things that you think are personal that you don't want to share, the first reality is that most other people are also going through a lot of the same shit that you're going through. And if you can share it with other people, not only are you going to get something off your chest, but you could indeed inspire other people and change their lives. And that is the brilliance of storytelling.
And that brings in the humanity, James. The thing is, the moment you start showing that human side, all of a sudden you're not a marketer and a lead gen and all this stuff, because that's all sort of inhumane kind of interaction. You become a different person, so people start listening. And then if you have something that you do outside of that, it might lead a certain percentage of that audience to go and look at that. But that human side of marketing, I just find a lot of people just don't get it.
So to recap here, the content is key. And Tim has found his formula. It's up to you to find your own. Part 2, make it a habit. Once again, it doesn't matter what formula that you're using, the habit is absolutely powerful. In my not so humble opinion, Tim, I think that's the most important and powerful piece. I think just as it's life really, isn't it? We got good habits, we got bad habits, habits that send us forward, habits that send us backwards. And then this last piece about storytelling, super powerful. If you want to be memorable, everybody remembers a story. If you want to share your authentic self, everybody loves a good story as well too. Now, Tim, if I wanted to learn more about what it is that you do and I wanted to inject myself into your world and maybe sign up for some of your products or services, what would be a good way for me to do that if I wanted to right now?
Yeah, sure. So it's timdenning.com. So DENN for Nelly, ING.com. Join the email list. To be honest, like 95% of what I do is free anyway. So you'll get access to like really good blog posts, people that I interview, that kind of stuff. And then, yeah, there's some online courses, like different times of the year. I'm not running anything at the moment, but yeah, we'd love to just have you on the email list. Please don't click the follow button because I can't talk to you if you follow. LinkedIn and these platforms will just block us from the interaction. So email list is the most direct way.
All right. Or you could just follow him, track him down on Medium, track him down on Twitter, and then also go to his website, get on his email list, because clearly Tim is the type of guy that is very generous and he loves to give. He's been very generous today. Thank you so much, Tim Denning.
Cool. Thank you, James. A pleasure, mate. And by the way, we've been trying to do this since 2014. So 7 years, man. We made it happen.
Woohoo! Yay!